All about Harappan civilization. Let us begin this essay with a brief introduction of the Indus Valley civilization. The Indus Valley or the Harappan civilization is almost 5,000 years old. The excavation on the different sites of this civilization began in the 1920s. The mature phase of the Harappan civilization lasted from 2600 to 1900 BCE. However, the entire civilization may be taken to have lasted from the 33rd to the 14th centuries BCE, which included the cultures of early and late Harappans also. The early Harappan communities by 2600 BCE turned into large urban centers such as Harappa, Ganeriwala, Mohenjo-daro, which are in present Pakistan, and Dholavira, Kalibangan, Raki Ghari, Rupar and Lothal in today's India. The sources of information which indicates on different aspects of this civilization are the archaeological evidence in the form of seals, beads, stone blades, baked bricks, drains, etc., which throw light on the house, pots, ornaments, tools, and planning of the civilization. These objects were found from areas as far as Afghanistan, Jammu, Pakistan, and Gujarat. How the world discovered the Harappan civilization. When Cunningham, the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, began archaeological excavations in the mid-19th century, he used the accounts left by Chinese Buddhist pilgrims who had visited the subcontinent between the 4th and the 7th centuries CE as the reference. But Harappan civilization was not part of the Chinese itinerary. So although Harappan artifacts were found during the 19th century and some of these reached Cunningham, he did not realize how old these were. This was because he, like many others, thought that Indian history began with the first cities in the Ganga Valley. Subsequently, seals were discovered at Harappa by archaeologists such as Dayaram Sahani in the early decades of the 20th century. It was then that their significance began to be realized. Another archaeologist, Rakhal Das Banerjee, found similar seals at Mohenjo-daro, leading to the conjecture that these sites were part of a single archaeological culture. Based on these finds in 1924, John Marshall, the Director General of the ASI, announced the discovery of a new civilization in the Indus Valley to the world. Similar kinds of seals were already found during the excavations at Mesopotamia. It was then that the world discovered a new civilization which was as old as that of Mesopotamia. Post-partition, major Harappan sites are now in Pakistani territory. This has spurred the Indian archaeologists to try and locate sites in India as well. An extensive survey in Kutch has revealed a number of Harappan settlements and explorations in Punjab and Haryana. The most recently found site is Dholavira in Gujarat. Since the 1980s, there has also been growing international interest in Harappan archaeology. Specialists from the subcontinent and abroad have been jointly working at both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. They are using modern scientific techniques including surface exploration to recover traces of clay, stone, metal, and plant and animal remains, as well as to minutely analyze every scrap of available evidence. These explorations promise to yield interesting results in the future. Let's now know about the subsistence and agricultural strategies of the Indus Valley civilization. This civilization has had an agricultural economy. The archaeological evidences found on different Harappan sites show charred seeds and grains of wheat, barley, lentil, chickpeas, millets, and sesame, indicating that they were the staple diet of this culture. Rice was less eaten and cotton was used for dyeing. Traces found also indicate the domestic usage of cattle such as sheep, goat, buffalo, and pig. The bones of wild species such as boar, deer, and gharial are also found along with fish fowl. Whether they were used as meat or something else is not known. The basic agricultural technique followed by Harappans was ploughing with stone blades by oxen. The archaeologists found on seals and terracotta sculptures the figure of the animal similar to the bull. The models of the plough were also found at sites in Haryana and Kalibangan in Rajasthan. Advanced irrigation techniques were also followed as traces of canals have been found at the Harappan site in Afghanistan. The water reservoirs found in Dholavira in Gujarat were used to store water for agriculture along with the wells. How was the urban town planning of Harappan civilization? The Harappans had achieved some spectacular standards when it came to building their cities. Each city was carefully planned with the occupancy of almost 40,000 people. All the cities were built on more or less same pattern. Let's take Mohenjo-daro for the reference. The city was divided into two sections, each fortified separately. One section was known as the citadel, was located on an artificially raised mud mound, while the other level was on the level ground. The citadel contained the important buildings of the city like the assembly halls, religious structures, granaries, and in the case of Mohenjo-daro, the famous Great Bath. The lower section of the city was where the housing for the inhabitants were located. It was here where some truly amazing features have been discovered. The city was well connected with broad roads about 30 meters long in a grid pattern, intersecting at right angles. The houses were located in the rectangular squares and were built with sun-baked bricks. Many houses had spacious courtyards where the Harappan inhabitants cooked and weaved. Some of the bigger houses even had multiple stories and paved floors. What is noteworthy is that almost every house had its own wells, drains, and bathrooms. Each house was connected directly to an excellent underground sewer system that ran throughout the city. It seems that the streets with drains were laid out first, and then houses were built along with them. Amazingly, this ancient civilization enjoyed not only sanitary conveniences, but also a highly developed municipal life. Two examples of marvelous structural planning are: 1. Granaries. A special feature of the cities was the large granary. As a structure, it is particularly impressive, running 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 15 feet high. This gave the granary an astounding 168,750 cubic feet of space. The granary was divided into 27 compartments into 3 rows. It was well ventilated. The large size of the granary probably indicates a highly developed agricultural civilization. 2. The Great Bath. The city of Mohenjo-daro possessed an amazing structure known as the Great Bath. The entire structure is about 179 feet long and 107 feet wide. The complex has a large quadrangle in the center with galleries and rooms on all sides. In the center of this quadrangle, there is a large swimming enclosure that is 39 feet long, 23 feet wide, and 8 feet deep. The entire complex is connected to an elaborate water supply and sewer system. The Great Bath was probably used for religious or ritualistic purposes. Tracking social differences through burials and luxurious traces found. Archaeologists believe that there was disparity in social status amongst the Harappan people, which is indicated by traces found of the burial system on the Harappan sites. The dead were buried in pits in a wooden box. However, the evidence which archaeologists believe indicates the difference in social class is that the burial pits were designed in different ways, like in some instances the hollowed out spaces were lined with bricks, which might be the burials for higher status inhabitants. Harappans believed in rebirth, as graves contained pottery and ornaments, perhaps indicating a belief that these could be used in the afterlife. Scholars also believe that the items of luxuries like gold, which were costly or rarely available, also indicates the disparity in social classes. If we study the distribution of such artifacts, we find that rare objects made of valuable materials are generally concentrated in large settlements like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and are rarely found in the smaller settlements. For example, miniature pots of faience, which are glazed pottery, were perhaps used as perfume bottles and were found mostly in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. And there are none from the small settlements like Kalibangan. Let us now know about the art and craft of the civilization. The variety of materials were used in various craft and art materials like beads such as jasper, crystal, quartz, and steatite, shells, terracotta, and metals like copper, bronze, and gold. Harappans, however, did not use iron. This civilization was skilled in wheel pottery, painting, and sculpture. Sculpture appeared to have made great advancements based on the various artifacts that have been found. Harappans made sculptures mainly in stone, metal, and terracotta. The famous bust of the bearded man and the male torso are examples of such work. This civilization had also made great advances in metal sculptures, using a fascinating technique to make sculptures out of bronze. The process was known as the lost wax process. In this process, the sculptures were first made out of wax. A layer of clay was then put over this wax, and the sculpture was then heated. This resulted in the melting of the wax, leaving behind a hollow mold. Molten metal was then poured into this mold. After cooling, the clay was removed and a metal sculpture remained. A beautiful example of such work is the naked dancing girl found at Mohenjo-daro. She is covered with jewelry, wearing several necklaces and bangles. Bronze figures of buffaloes and the hump bull have also been found. The Indus Valley Civilization also made several sculptures out of terracotta. A fine example of it is a figure of the mother goddess shown as a mark of fertility and prosperity. The Indus inhabitants had also developed skills in pottery and painting. They used a special type of clay which was baked. Once the pot was made, the painters would paint beautiful designs, the theme being birds, animals, and men. The craft also included making of different types of colorful beads for ornaments like in crystal, jade, etc. Artifacts of such ornaments were also found. Specialized drills for making the beads have been found at Chanhudaro, Lothal, and Dholavira. As per the traces found, the finished products from Nageshwar, Balakot, Chanhudaro, and Lothal were taken to other urban centers such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. The materials for craft production were obtained from different Harappan cities. Expeditions were also sent to areas such as the Khatri region of Rajasthan for copper and South India for gold. These expeditions also established communication with the local communities. Occasional finds of Harappan artifacts such as steatite, microbeads in these areas indicates about this. There are many facts that throw light on the trade of the civilization. Trading was an important part of Indus civilization. Facts show the traces of overseas and internal trading. Copper was not only traded from Rajasthan but also from Oman. Chemical analysis of both Omani copper and Harappan artifacts have traces of nickel, suggesting a common origin. Other archaeological finds which suggest long-distance trades includes Harappan seals, weights, dice, and beads. In this context, it is worth noting that Mesopotamian texts mention contact with regions named Dilmun, Magan, and Meluha, possibly the Harappan region. They mention the products from Meluha like copper, gold, and varieties of food. It is likely that communication with Oman, Bahrain, or Mesopotamia was by sea. Mesopotamian texts refer to Meluha as a land of seafarers. Besides, we find depictions of ships and boats on the sea. The enigmatic seals that were discovered at the various cities are the main source of knowing different aspects of Harappan civilization. Most inscriptions in the seals are short, the longest containing about 26 signs. These seals usually had some animal or human engraved on them along with a script at the bottom which has not been deciphered as yet. However, it is apparent that the script was written from right to left. The seals were apparently used by merchants in trade as a means of identifying their goods. The large number of unique seals discovered indicates that Harappans were a large trading community. Some of the important seals which had been found frequently are the Pashupati seal. This seal depicts what is probably the modern Hindu god Shiva. Lord Shiva is surrounded by various animals like the rhino, the buffalo, elephant, and the tiger. He wears a crown of horns on his head. He is believed to be the main deity of the Indus civilization. The unicorn seal. This is based on a fictional animal and imagination of craftsmen, a fine example of early fictional art. The bull seal. This seal shows a humped bull displaying a strong, energetic bull, a proof of the fine artistic skills of that time. Besides the seals, the variety of objects on which writing has been found are copper tools, rims of jars, copper and terracotta tablets, jewelry, bone rods, and even an ancient signboard. However, this script or writing is still not understood by our experts. Another technique of trading was that the exchanges were regulated by a precise system of cubical weights, usually made of a stone called chert. They had no markings. The lower denominations of weights were binary, while the higher denominations followed the decimal system. The smaller weights were probably used for weighing jewelry and beads. Metal scale pans have also been found. How was the ancient authority of this civilization? There are indications of complex decisions being taken and implemented in Harappan society. Take for instance the extraordinary uniformity of Harappan artifacts as evident in pottery, seals, weights and bricks. Notably bricks, though obviously not produced in any single center, were of a uniform ratio throughout the region, from Jammu to Gujarat. We have also seen that settlements were strategically set up in specific locations for various reasons. Some archaeologists are of the opinion that Harappan society had no rulers, and that everybody enjoyed an equal status. Others feel that there was no single ruler but several, that Mohenjo-daro had a separate ruler. Yet, others argue that there was a single state, given the similarity in artifacts, the evidence for planned settlements, and the standardized ratio of brick size. As of now, the last theory seems to be the most plausible. So what led to the decline of this civilization? A definite reason for the sudden decline of the Indus Valley civilization is still elusive, since there are no reliable records. All excavations, however, do prove that the decline occurred suddenly between 1800 BC and 1700 BC. It has been suggested that perhaps the people of the Indus Valley civilization were destroyed by invading barbaric tribes or the Aryans, since their epics talk about their conquest of great cities. However, the theory of climatic factors causing the decline has been gaining more credibility in the light of the recent research. Around 2000 BC, major ecological changes like drought, floods occurred frequently in the Indus Valley. Evidence to prove was the rebuilding of the same towns several times. For a civilization which was highly dependent on agriculture, such major climatic changes had a devastating effect. The influence the big cities had on the rest of the region was based largely on the amount of grain they stocked in their granaries. Once agricultural production declined, the influence of the cities declined, and eventually the region went into a state of anarchy.